Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Jeff D at Downfield Read. Thanks for tuning into this one. We're going to post this one when it's not live as well. It's going to go out on every social media platform that I've got, which is X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Spotify, all those things. So if you don't follow me on any one of these platforms, go ahead and do it. As of right now, the only live shows that you're going to see from me is going to be on YouTube, only because once we get 150 followers here, then we're going to be able to basically broadcast live on a bunch of different shows. So today we're going a little bit out of the norm. Hope everybody is having a wicked awesome Wednesday. Thanks for tuning into this one. We're going a little bit off of the norm, like I said, where we're not doing a prediction show. We're not doing a fantasy football show right now. We will get to the prediction show later today. We usually do that on a Thursday. Nick and I both have a conflict of interest for tomorrow, so we're going to have that done tonight, and we'll get that out to you about 5 o'clock Central Time. Or at least that's when we'll be starting that show, is at 5 o'clock Central Time. So tune in for that one. The one topic, though, that seems to be really hot in the NFL right now is the Davante Adams trade request away from the Las Vegas Raiders. And so I wanted to touch on that real quick because there's a lot of different things that go into this type of a situation. Obviously, we saw this earlier in the season with, the holdouts from Brandon Ayuk and who am I missing there? Brandon Ayuk, Jamar Chase. Sorry about that. But we've got these kind of situations where now we're only 4 weeks into the season, and we've got a guy who's really not happy with where he's at with the Raiders. And I guess we'll dive into why and what teams are going to be available for that. But this seems to be the hot button right now. Is Davante Adams? Is he faking an injury? Is he actually hurt? Is he going to be able to play? When's he going to play? Who's he going to play for? So we're going to break it down for you today. There's a lot of different talking heads out there that are talking about what teams are going to be looking for him, what teams need him, who's going to be trading. Does Davante Adams have any kind of a say in this? So we're going to get into that right now with Davante Adams Wednesday today. Wednesday Adams, maybe we'll call it that. As I'm sure that most of you have heard anyway, Adams has requested a trade, and honestly, who can blame him? The Las Vegas Raiders have done almost nothing to support him as far as a quarterback. They started the year with Aiden O'Connell, who didn't finish real strong last year for the squad. They went out and they got Gardner Minshew. He's really more of a quarterback number two type of a situation. Definitely not somebody that he's used to playing with. And whether you want to go all the way back to Aaron Rodgers, or if you want to say Derek Carr, who's been up and down this year, he started hot and kind of cooled down. Those two individuals, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, are nowhere near the guys that he's used to playing with. So also, the Raiders have basically done nothing as far as their running backs. They don't have anything great there. Alexander Mattison was a great pickup after he was playing in Minnesota last year, but White hasn't basically done anything. There's no offense here, and you can see that from his output in the numbers so far. They have an inexperienced head coach with Antonio Pierce. Not sure if he was really the right guy for the job. He seemed to really amp up that team at the end of last year. They got a few wins. They made him the head coach, but he's an inexperienced head coach. And Adams' time in the NFL is running out. He's going to be 32 years old in December, and he wants to win now instead of being some kind of a rebuild or part of some kind of a rebuild. That's not where he's at in his career. So it's completely understandable to say, hey, you know what? Davante Adams wants out of here. Looks like they're going for youth. It looks like they're not really trying real hard to win right now mentality. So it's starting to look like Las Vegas is going to finish either third or fourth in that AFC West again. Obviously, you've got Kansas City to compete with. The Chargers have been up and down. They're 2-2, and now the Broncos are 2-2. So you've got a hard division to play in here, and it's not looking real promising. So I can understand why he wants out. But the first thing that we are going to talk about in any trade scenario here is how much is Davante Adams going to cost a new team? Well, for this year, it would be anywhere from $13.5 million to roughly $9.5 million, depending on when a trade actually happens between now and the trade deadline, which is in the first week of October. I believe it's October 5th this year. This, of course, if no negotiating of a contract is involved, and there's no trade package involved that includes another player, if Las Vegas wanted to get another wide receiver or something else in return, obviously it skews that number a little bit, but teams need to have a cap number of, if they're making a play for him right now, $13.5 million. Otherwise, like I said, between 13.5 and 9.5. Next year, for Davante Adams. It could cost whichever team trades for him about $36 million, but that it's not guaranteed. And again, there could always be some kind of a negotiation of his contract to bring that down. But he does have that as an option in his contract with Las Vegas right now, where he would be a very big hit against their salary cap. So there's really no reason, if Davante Adams is unhappy in Las Vegas, why you wouldn't want to move on him anyway. So let's keep it simple at this point. At $13 million or 13 and a half, which team or teams have the cap space right now to sign Adams? Well, roughly half of the NFL does. And here are those teams that have a minimum of $13 million available. Again, if there is no other trade involved with trading a player and maybe freeing up cap space from the other side. You've got San Francisco, Cleveland, Detroit, New England, Washington, Dallas, Miami, Arizona, the New York Jets, Jacksonville, Green Bay, Tennessee, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh. So you've got 14 teams in there. Of these 14 teams, who needs Adams? It's also important to note that Davante does not have a no trade clause in his contract. So he doesn't have any say where he gets to go. If they wanted to send him off to Cleveland, he's going to Cleveland. That's it. No negotiation there. Starting at the teams with the most salary cap and working our way down, it looks like this. Number one is the San Francisco 49ers. They don't need Davante Adams, but it would be an intriguing deal if they wanted to trade Brandon Ayuk for Adams and give them both a fresh start. Ayuk isn't getting it done in San Francisco, even after being the wide receiver number one when Debo was hurt over the last week 2, week 3. Las Vegas would have to tweak a few things on their side to get Ayuk under the salary cap. And Ayuk would have to agree to go to Las Vegas because his deal actually says that he has a say. So the whole scenario is a little messy. I'm marking that one down as very unlikely, but it does seem to favor both teams in that respect, because Brandon Ayuk doesn't seem to still want to be there even after the new contract. It would work, but I don't see that as a possibility. Next team is going to be the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns are currently 29th in passing yards. So this would be a team that it would make sense to grab another wide receiver out there if you're just looking at the passing yardage of it. They could absolutely use the help there. However, the problem in Cleveland isn't necessarily the wide receivers. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, who they just traded for in this offseason, Elijah Moore, it's not their fault. It's their quarterback and their offensive line. And I think Cleveland really needs to address that before spending any money on a wide receiver that's never going to get the ball anyway. Next team is going to be the Detroit Lions. And this would definitely make the Lions a front runner in the NFC, hands down, and something that they should actually think about. I mean, could you imagine Amon-Ra St. Brown and Davante Adams both lining up there? That would be incredible. But here's the thing. What the Lions showed on Monday night was that they don't need Adams. Not only was Jared Goff a perfect 18 of 18 on the night, but that also means that his wide receivers were perfect in catching what he was throwing to them. While this would be a fun opportunity and probably what Adams is looking for, I just don't see this one happening. Next team is going to be the New England Patriots. They've got the next most cap space. And if ever there was a team that was in dire need of a wide receiver, it's the New England Patriots. Adams would come in the surefire number one with Jalen Polk, KJ Osborne, Demario Douglas, and give whatever quarterback that they choose to start with between Jacoby Brissett and Drake May a much better opportunity to win those games. This situation wouldn't make Adams very happy at all. But again, as I mentioned earlier, he doesn't get a choice. The New England Patriots are one of the worst offensive scoring teams. I think they're actually the worst, number one or number two. So you'd be trading a guy to a team that doesn't have a chance anyway. Would it make Adams happy? Absolutely not. But you know what? If he's coming out and he's saying, he's hurt, or maybe he's not hurt, and maybe he doesn't want to play, and you've got a diva in Las Vegas, maybe you do. You trade him over there. You make this deal as a warning to future players who decide not to play and ask for a trade after 4 weeks. You could make that example of him. Next team is the Commanders, and Washington doesn't seem to have a problem with passing. In the beginning of the year, they weren't getting the ball to Terry McLaurin very much, and you wondered who their number two was. They traded Jahan Dotson to the Philadelphia Eagles. They are currently ranked number 12 overall, and they also don't have a problem with scoring as of late either. Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin seem to have found their connection, their chemistry. However, they still only have Noah Brown and Luke McCaffrey behind him. Adding Adams would almost ensure that they win the NFC East in that regard. And if they could negotiate a long-term deal with Adams, boy, the Commanders could be in command of that division for the next few years with Jaden Daniels and Adams on his side. The next team up, we're going to stick with the NFC East, is the Dallas Cowboys. And speaking of the NFC East, you can't rule out the Cowboys or what Jerry Jones is going to do. Much like Detroit, you could have an awesome pairing of CeeDee Lamb and Davante Adams. That would be impressive. But passing isn't the Cowboys' problem this year on the offense. They're currently 4th in the NFL in passing yards. Their problem is running the ball. And if they want to stay competitive in the East, they should think about trading for a different running back or getting better offensive linemen. But like I said, Jerry Jones is like a little kid. He sees shiny, flashy new things, and he wanty these things. So I can understand why Davante Adams might be somebody that he goes after. It's just not really a need, and I don't think it's going to help the Cowboys in the long term or even in the short term for this year. The next team is the Miami Dolphins. This one is easy. The Dolphins don't need him, period. They have Tyreek Hill. They have Jalen Waddle. They don't need a Davante Adams. They've got OBJ who's coming back. I'm just going to shoot that one down right away, even if Miami wanted him. I don't think Mike McDaniels is in any point to really demand or command or really make any kind of request at this point. I think he's on the hot seat in Miami, so we're going to scratch Miami right off the list right away. Next team is Arizona, and this is a cool one, right? The Cardinals could use a top veteran wide receiver like Davante Adams. Yes, they have rookie phenom Marvin Harrison Jr., but after that, they've got Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. Whoop-de-doo. They're admirable, but let's be honest, they're not a Davante Adams. The Cards are currently 25th in passing yards as well, so having a bolster at that wide receiver spot really could help them out. And they just got smoked by the Commanders too. So trying to run everything through James Conner isn't going to work long-term if they've already shown that they can't compete against teams with high-powered offenses, which they haven't. And being in a division with San Francisco, who can put up big points, Seattle, the Rams, once they get restocked again with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, they all have significantly better weapons than the Arizona Cardinals. So this might be a good move for the Cards to make sooner than later. Next team up, and you've heard a lot about this one, obviously the New York Jets are going to get involved with this trade negotiation. Yes, finally we get to the Jets and the potential reunion of Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. And I'm not going to lie, after watching the Jets get beat in a very low-scoring game, 10-9, last week versus the Broncos, this is what the Jets might have to do to keep those Super Bowl aspirations alive. The Bills look like they're going to win the division at this point, and there seems to be no chemistry between Rodgers and Garrett Wilson. Whether it's the cadence, whether it's not the cadence, they seem to be good in the preseason, but for whatever reason, they're just not connecting. Allen Lazard, which is kind of a little note here, Allen Lazard, who played with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, has almost as many receptions as Garrett Wilson does, and he actually does have more yards than Garrett Wilson. So getting wide receivers that Rodgers is familiar with and who are familiar with him, if it is really a cadence problem, might be the way for Robert Saleh, head coach of the Jets, to save his job this year. Next up is the Jaguars. As long as Jacksonville is doing as poorly as they are, I don't see them spending any kind of money to try to bring in their almost dead season back to life. This is going to be a non-issue. They've got enough money to spend, but I think what they're really going to have to think about is how they're going to get more players in here, because they did give Trevor Lawrence that gigantic contract, and he is not a top quarterback. You're going to have to spend money somewhere else. You're not going to be able to afford a Davante Adams. And even if you wanted to this year, it might be too little too late. So bringing him in would be pointless. Now we're back to another connection here. How about the Green Bay Packers? This would be another intriguing reunion with Adams going back to Green Bay. And it sounds like Christian Watson will again miss extended time. This leaves Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Dontavius Wicks. Not exactly an A squad of wide receivers and barely probably a B squad of wide receivers at this point. Reasons not to bring Adams back? Well, Green Bay just threw for almost 400 yards last week, although they still lost to Minnesota. And the Packers are 7th in passing yards through 4 weeks this year, in which Malik Willis started 2 of those games. Reasons to bring Adams back? Well, the Minnesota Vikings are 4-0, and they just beat you And the Detroit Lions are in your division. Did you see what they did to Seattle on Monday Night Football? So you're going to have a real hard time staying competitive with those two teams, both in your division. It's going to make it real hard for you to get to the playoffs if you maybe don't add some firepower here. The Tennessee Titans are next up. They are currently 30th in passing yards, but much like the Browns, the issue really isn't with the wide receivers. They have a very capable Calvin Ridley. They got Tyler Boyd, who they signed off in the offseason, and they have D-Hop. DeAndre Hopkins is already there. So adding a Davante Adams into this mix, I don't think it's going to create any positive, more wins, more production, anything like that. I think you're pretty much capped out because you've got two quarterbacks in there that really aren't going to get him the ball anyway. We don't know what's going on with Will Levis. How bad is his shoulder? Are they going to have to start Mason Rudolph now? Not a good situation. I don't think the Titans are going to spend any money on Davante Adams. And even if you're thinking maybe a swap between 32-year-olds, because that's what D-Hop is, I don't think that works out for anybody's benefit either, except for maybe Las Vegas. You've got the Vikings, who are up next with the amount of cap space that they have. To put it simply, Minnesota's 4-0. If it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. Moving on. Next team, Pittsburgh Steelers. So this is a good one because obviously everybody knows that Pittsburgh fought like hell to try to get Brandon Ayuk. So I don't see the Davante Adams situation being any different from what they tried to get in the beginning. Baltimore just proved that they are the team who we thought that they were going to be by destroying the Bills, and Cincinnati is also averaging 25.5 points per game. So the Steelers are not going to be able to kick 5 to 6 field goals and have that be enough, even with as good as their defense is. The Steelers are still a top AFC, or they are on the top of the AFC North right now, but that is just 4 now. And I think people are starting to predict that as their schedule gets harder throughout the season, this is going to get much more difficult for the Steelers to stay on top. They're currently 22nd in passing, so getting Adams would be a huge upgrade from their number 2 and number 3. They've got Van Jefferson and Kelvin Austin III. I think Davante Adams comes into that situation, and he's automatically the number 2 guy. One team that can't afford Adams right now, but really should desperately try to make some kind of room somehow, is the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert needs some help, both on the offensive line. Hopefully that'll get healthy after their bye week, which is right now. And he also needs some wide receiver help. It's clear that Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnston, and Ladd McConkey are not the weapons that are going to keep him in the game against the Chiefs. If they would have had D-Hop in that game, man, there's a lot of what ifs, right? But if they have D-Hop in that, or if they have Davante Adams in that kind of a game, I think it makes them a much more likely team to actually win at the end there, instead of struggling, scoring 10 points in the first quarter and not doing anything after that. They have a great running game, but their passing game ranks 31st in the NFL. So Davante Adams would be a huge upside. They can't afford it right now. They've only got about $5 million in cap. But if they can somehow unload on $10 million of that, I would say that that's a team that really should be making a play for Davante Adams at this point. So who are the top 3 teams that I believe are going to acquire or go after the most Davante Adams? Well, it's these 3 teams right up here on your screen right now. Number 1, Pittsburgh. I would hate to see this happen as a Ravens fan because I still believe that Davante Adams is one of the better wide receivers in the game. But it makes a lot more sense than other locations. Yes, the Steelers are still in the AFC, and the Raiders will play them in 2 weeks. So I don't think a trade is going to happen within that time period. The Raiders are definitely not going to want to trade within their own division, and they're probably not going to want to trade to a team that they're going to match up with in a couple of weeks and get burned by them, unless they know Davante Adams isn't playing. Maybe then they trade Pittsburgh for something, take a piece away from them, make it easier to beat them in a couple of weeks. But maybe they hold off until after October 13th. Maybe something happens after the fact. They get to save a little bit more money. But the Steelers will make a big move, if they haven't already, for him before the division gets out of reach for Pittsburgh. Number 2 is going to be the Jets, obviously with Aaron Rodgers there. The Raiders don't have to worry about playing the Jets. And if the organization wants to make Rodgers happy, that would be the Jets. If they want to make Rodgers happy and not disappoint their fan base for a second year in a row, they will make this move ASAP, and they will do it, like I said, before Pittsburgh, or maybe before the Raiders are really ready to trade him off to Pittsburgh again, to have that kind of a conflict with them in a couple of weeks here. If they don't want to wait, if they want to get something for Davante Adams right now, I say they make that move to the Jets right away. And if they get anything in return, they will make this move before the trade actually would go through with the Steelers. And number 3, I don't think it's too much of a long shot here. The third team is the New England Patriots. The Patriots are garbage right now. It's amazing that they're actually 1-3 at this point, but they need a wide receiver more than anybody. So they've scored the second fewest points, and they haven't drafted well for the last half a decade or more. When you do those things, or when you don't do those things, I guess, you have to go and buy some players. So if New England made a move here, they could offer Adams a long-term deal, give Drake May a weapon for the future, because obviously Jacoby Brissett is not going to be the guy of the future there, maybe for the next 3 years. Like I said, Davante Adams is going to be 32 in December. So he's still got a few years in there. If you can renegotiate his contract, bring down that $32 million for next year, keep him on the team, that could be a great building point maybe for next year if you think that this year might be too late. I see the Patriots as the most desperate. Therefore, I think they are willing to give the most in return. And if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, that's going to be the thing that you're probably looking at the most. What can you get right now? They're 2-2. So it's not like they're completely out of it. They're just, without Davante Adams, it makes it a heck of a lot harder to do it. So those are my 3 teams: New York Jets, New England Patriots, Pittsburgh Steelers. They're all in the AFC. And I will say this, for a team, maybe an honorable mention team as maybe a number 4 team, I think the Arizona Cardinals. If they're not looking real happy, or I should say if Las Vegas isn't real keen on trading Davante Adams to another AFC team, I think that the first team that would come to mind that might want to get on top of him is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. You pair up a veteran wide receiver like Davante Adams with a rookie like Marvin Harrison Jr. You take a little bit of weight off of Kyler Murray and that running game with James Conner. How long is that going to last? James Conner is known for being injury prone. Your backup running backs, DiMacario and Trey Benson, they haven't been able to step up. So really before it's too late. And that's what I would say to the Arizona Cardinals. If Martin Harrison Jr. goes down, you guys are completely out of it. You're not out of it yet, but you will be if something happens to him. You remain competitive, and you get a little bit more competitive with those tougher teams in your division by going after Davante Adams. So that's really about it for right now. I just wanted to throw this out here real quick for everyone. If you liked it, great. If not, whatever, call me out on it. But that's the end of the stream. We've got another show coming up tonight. It's going to be the prediction show, so stay tuned for that. That is going to happen at 5 Central Time. Thanks for your time today. Quick 20-minute little insert here, and that's about it. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.